Hello and welcome to this UPE Git tutorial. In this video, we will be covering the basics of using Git through the command line. We will be going over what exactly Git is, how to install it, and how to use basic commands in order to work with local and remote repositories. This video will be useful to understand version control. For those of you who are somewhat familiar with Git, you may know that there exist some GUI tools which make it easier to work and navigate Git. But the reason that we're starting off with the Git command line tool here is because there will inevitably be situations where the GUI tools cannot handle a given error, and you will need to use your underlying knowledge of the command line tool in order to resolve your issue. So what is Git? Well, Git is a distributed version control system. A distributed version control system means that everyone has a local repository. This means you have the option to host a centralized remote repository, and your local remote repository will also have a duplicate copy of everything that was stored on that centralized repository based on the last time that the two were synced together. In the case that something were to happen to the centralized repository or a local repository, every developer will also have a backup of the entire repository on their machine. So in order to install Git, what you're going to do is navigate to git-scm.com and you're going to head over to the downloads page. From there, you're going to install the version for your operating system, and the install is pretty much self-explanatory and easy to do, which is why I won't be going over any walkthrough for that. Once you have Git installed, all you're going to do is pull up your terminal if you're running a Mac or Linux operating system, or if you're running on a Windows operating system, you're going to pull up the Git CMD. And then from there, I'll show you how to set up Git. Alright, so now once you have Git installed, in order to verify that Git was properly installed, the first command that you're going to run is git -- version. If it's properly installed, you'll see Git and you'll see a version number as well. So now the next thing you're going to do is set up your global configuration values. And this is important when working with other developers so that others know who is checking code in and out, making changes, and updating the repository. This pretty much acts as a way to add your name to those code updates and changes. So to start, the first one that we're going to do is git config -- global, and we're going to set user.name. And in my case, my name is Michael Taylor, but you'll set that to your name. Now, the second one that we're going to set is going to be user.email. So we'll do git config again, -- global, and we will set user.email. In my case, I will put uconn, upe.gmail.com. Now, you're going to set those. In order to make sure you properly configured those, what you're going to do is do git config -- global and -- list. Now, if you set them properly, you'll see that we set user.name equal to our name and user.email to our email. So something that you're going to notice while using Git is if the command that you're running does not need to return or print something on the terminal or shell, then it'll have what is known as a quiet success. And that's actually a term that I picked up during my GitHub Campus Experts training. And basically what it means is that the only time Git is going to display something on the terminal or shell after executing a Git statement is when there either needs to be a need for returning or displaying some sort of message or if something goes wrong. But in the case that it doesn't need to display anything, or if nothing goes wrong, then it'll just continue on and you can input your next command without any display message. And that's basically what it means as a quiet success. So now in the event going forward that you need to look up what a certain command does, there are one of the two following commands. So what you can run is git help, and you're going to pass in the verb that you need help with. So since we just did config, our example will be git help and config. And when you run that, you're going to see a good amount of documentation that you can read as to figuring out how that works. Now, the other way you can do it as well is you can do git and then pass in the verb and do -- help. So in our case, let's do config again. we run that, you'll see the same documentation in order to help us understand what config does. So now there are usually two common scenarios where a person may want or need to use Git. The first is to be able to start tracking a project that they are currently working on their local machine. And the other scenario is when you have an existing project which exists remotely and you want to develop on it. So let's explore the first scenario where you have an existing project saved on your local machine. So let me actually change directories. So I already have a kind of dummy project set up for us, and that's going to be in the following repository. So now if I list everything that's in this repository, you'll see that I have two files and a modules folder. And I actually have Git set up. So what I'm going to show you is right now it's tracking everything because I had previously set this up. So in the case that you ever want to stop tracking your files in terms of Git, what you're going to do is do rm-rf and you're going to remove that .git folder. And by removing that .git folder, you're removing all tracking that you've done on that project. But in our case, since we actually want to use some tracking and version control on this project, we want to add that .git folder. So let's just do an ls-la again to see all the files within that repository. And you'll see, again, the two mock files and a modules folder. So now, in order to set up our Git repository, what we'll do is do git init. If we run ls-la, you'll see that I created that .git folder. So now, if we run Git Status, you'll see that it gives us 3 untracked files or folders. And those are the 2 mock files and the 1 mock folder. So we saw that when we ran Git Status that we have some untracked files. And this is because we have not actually staged any of these files for Git to keep track of. Now, in this demo, the whole modules folder that I've created inside this repository is going to be an example of files that we do not want in our repository because we may not want other people to see it, or in certain cases, it may be a huge folder of modules and dependencies that can be easily installed using one command. So to ignore these files, what we're going to do is create a .gitignore file. So we'll do touch.gitignore. Now I'm going to go open up that file. So now inside this .gitignore file, we simply add the names of files, folders, or directories that we do not want to be tracked. So in my case, I don't want the modules folder to be tracked. I'll add that and save that. And you can list as many files and folders that you don't want to be tracked in your Git repository. So now that I've saved this, let me go back and run Git Status. Now you'll see that the modules folder does not appear anymore, but our gitignore file appears. And we actually want that to be tracked so that we can tell Git to ignore that modules folder and any other files that we don't want to be tracked. So there are 3 stages within our local Git repository which you must know about. Currently, we are in the working directory, and basically untracked and modified files are those which will appear here. And you can see these using the git status command. The staging area is the next stage of the process and acts as a place to pick and choose what we want to have committed. In order to add these files to the staging area, we use the git add command. So let's go ahead and do that. What we're going to do is run git add-a, and anything that's currently untracked will be added to that staging area. So if we do that and run git status, you'll see we're now keeping track of the .gitignore file, file1.md, and file2.md. So now if we ever want to remove files from the staging area, we just do git reset. And if you just do this command, it'll remove everything. But let's just remove one file for now. We'll do file1.md. And if we run git status, you'll see that it's no longer being tracked. Now, if we wanted to add one file individually, to the staging area, what we'll do is do git add, and we'll pass in the file name. So we'll do file1.md. And if we run git status, you'll see that it reappears. So now we're ready to commit our files onto the repository. So in order to do that, what we're going to do is do git commit, and you do -m, and you add a message. Now, the message under commit is very important because we want to be very detailed as to work which we just did, but we want to keep it brief. If we run git status after committing, you'll see that the working directory is going to be clean. So let me first do this git commit. So in order to keep it brief but concise, I'll just do initial commit. Now if I run git status, our working directory is currently clean. And now we can also run git log. We can see the commit which we just made. So now let's move on to our other scenario. Let's say that we have a remote repository that already exists somewhere and we want to start working on it. So in order to do that, what we're going to do is use the git clone command, and we're going to pass in the URL of that repository. And we're also going to tell the system where to save it to. And that's going to be relative to the current directory which you're currently in. So now, since I already have a URL that I'm going to clone from, I'm just going to pass that, and it's going to be a GitHub repository, which is the exact same as the previous repository we were previously working with in this video. And since I've already changed directories into the location where I want to save this directory to, I can leave the where to save part blank. But if I wanted to save it somewhere else, I could do terminal navigation commands here and kind of point it to where I would want to save it relative to my current directory. So let me run this, and now I will change directories into my demo repository, which is now cloned off GitHub. Now I'm inside there, and I can do a git status, and it'll say my branch is up to date with origin/master. Now that we've cloned our repository, we can view some important information regarding it using a couple of commands. The first one is going to be git remote-v, and all this does is it lists information about our repository, where we're fetching from and where we're pushing to. And basically all this is pointing to the link which I cloned this project off of, which is off my GitHub. Now, the other one that we can do to view some other important information is git branch-a. And all this does is it lists all the branches of our repository, both locally and remote. We've not yet covered branches, but that's a topic that I'll be covering coming up in this video. So now what I'm going to do is make some changes to some of our files and look at how to commit and push these changes to that remote repository. So let me actually go in here and let's modify our file1.md. So I'll actually add a line and I'll just say this is a new line. And I'll save that. Now if we go back here, we can run the git diff command, and this will tell us the modifications that we've done to our code. So you'll see that that previously our file was this is our first file, and now I've added a new line that says this is a new line. Next, what we're going to do is commit these changes locally. So we'll run git status, and you'll see that we've modified file1.md. So what we have to do is do git add file1.md in order to keep track of those files. So now if we run git status again, you'll see that we're now keeping track of the changes that we've now made to file1.md. So in order to commit this, what we're going to do is do git commit, add a brief but descriptive message. So I'm going to do modified file1.md. Now those changes have been committed, and we should see on Git Status that our current directory is clean. The next thing that we want to do now is push these changes onto the remote repository so that others can see them. So before we actually push, what we're going to do is do git pull origin, spelled that wrong, origin master. Great. And the git pull is important so that we can update any changes since the last time we pulled from that repository. Now we're going to be ready to push. So what we're going to do is do git push origin master. If we did that right, see that we get a success. And basically what origin refers to is our repository and master refers to our branch, just for reference. So now what we're going to do is take a look into branching, which is actually a common workflow that developers use when working on a project. So far, we've only been doing work on our master branch, but in practice, we wouldn't typically do it this way on a day-to-day basis. Let's say that we wanted to create a new feature on an application which we are working on. What we would do is create a branch where we could do our feature development on. So in our case, let's actually make a branch and we'll do git branch and we'll add a name to it. So in my case, I'll do feature. Now, in order to actually go into that branch, we have to do git checkout and type in the name of that branch we just made. Awesome. We can see all the branches in our repository by running git branch. So if we do git branch, and you'll see the one with an asterisk is the one which we are currently working on. So we can see that we are now on our feature branch. Now let's actually make some changes on this branch in order to implement some sort of feature. So let's go over and I'll actually make an edit on file 2 and I'll just say added a new feature. Save this. Now what we want to do, since we're on our feature branch, we have to commit these changes. So we'll run Git Status and we'll see that we modified file 2. And since we want to keep track of those changes, we're going to do git add and we're going to add file 2.md. So now Git Status, we'll see that it's now keeping track of that, and now we want to commit that. So we'll do git commit -m and I'll say added a new feature. So now we are ready to push our branch onto the remote repository. So in order to do that, what we're going to run is git push -u origin, and next we're going to pass in the name of our branch. So in our case, it's feature. And I spelled origin wrong once again, so let me fix that. And now if we run git branch -a, you'll see that our feature branch exists remotely as well. And what that -u option tells Git from before is that we want to associate our local branch with the remote branch. Usually you would push your local branch up to the remote branch because most companies, enterprises, and workplaces will run their unit testing here in order to make sure that your code passes before merging it onto your master branch. Now, if we are ready to merge our branch with master, we will first want to check out our local master branch. We'll do git checkout master. And now what we're going to do is do a git pull on origin master in order to get any recent updates or changes to that code. And I keep spelling origin wrong, so I apologize for that. Now I want to merge my feature branch, so what I'll do is run git merge. And since I'm already on my master branch, I will type in the name of the branch that I want to merge it with. So in this case, it'll be that feature branch. And this will now merge the entire feature branch onto master. So now we can push these changes onto our remote repository branch by running git push origin master. And let me stop there before I spell origin wrong again. And now that the merge is complete, it means we've completed that feature, and now we are ready to delete that branch. So now what we can do is do git branch -- merged. You'll see that we have master branch merged in with feature. So now what we'll do is do git branch -d, and we're going to put in the name of the branch that we want to delete. So that -d is going to delete this feature branch. From here, we will do git branch -a to see all the branches which we currently have available to us, and you'll see that the feature branch is no longer there. So now, if we wanted to delete that feature branch off the remote repository, what we have to run is git push origin -- delete. We have to type in that name of the branch, so feature. So now if we run git branch -a again, you'll see that the only one that exists now are the remote master and our local master. So thank you for following with me up to this point, and I realize that it may seem like a long and tedious process to use Git, but in reality, it is actually quite quick, simple, and easy when I don't actually have to stop and explain each step of the process. Hopefully you found this video to be quite informative and that you've gained some knowledgeable insights as to using Git. If you have any other questions, please direct them to upe.uconn.edu, and thanks for watching.